Gentleman is recognized.
And I'm going to be brief, I think, but it's interesting. A number of folks have noted that or begged the question why it's appropriate to essentially incentivize states to make this decision when states can certainly make the policy decision of their own. I respect those whose opinion is that eliminating from consideration, conviction history through expungement, denying the public information about them, that's good policy because it'll encourage employment and maybe reduce recidivism that way. I respect that, but it certainly seems that we could leave that decision to states and that there's not a reason for the federal government to pay for it, but there is another level of freedom that you might at least take into consideration, and that's people. It is interesting and to me highly disrespectful to individuals throughout this country who make decisions about whom to employ, whom to associate with for business reasons, and what they can take into consideration. To those people, you're saying, we're going to conceal government information from you that you might find useful. And in a lot of states have the ban the box provisions. They're saying to people who want to make business decisions, we're going to tell you what you can and can't consider in terms of somebody's criminal record. I think it would be better to just let people be free about what they decide to do and to appeal to their sense of fairness and responsibility and consideration of all possibilities, rather than have the mighty hand of the federal government try to impose it on people, impose it on states, impose. And so I just think I think we conceal too much government information. I think we ought to have more transparency. Let people know have access to the facts and respect them and count on them to make good decisions. That would be, I think, better policy. So I'll be voting against this for that reason.
Gentleman yield?
I'll yield back.
To Mr. Gaetz.
I'll yield to Mr. Gaetz.
I thank the gentleman for yielding upon my request. Prior to joining the Congress, I was the criminal justice chairman in the Florida House of Representatives, and we encountered a lot of legislative proposals regarding expungement, banning the box, and we were able to have the debates that Mr. Bishop just framed up in his remarks, and I believe fervently, having had that experience, that the best place for that debate is in the halls of our state legislatures, not in Congress. And I think that when we dangle federal money to get states to all kind of do things that we command or that we're incentivizing, we're functionally federalizing that entire decision-making process. So while I have been supportive of clean slate provisions at the state level of various form and kind, I do think that doing it at the federal level is wrong, and I think that whether it's federal grants for local law enforcement, federal grants for criminal justice process issues, it all erodes our federalist system. It limits innovation and creativity at the state level, and it sort of imposes a monolithic view. And so while I certainly agree that the goals of the legislation are laudable, I think that the process endeavored upon is flawed. And I yield back to the gentleman from North Carolina.
And I thank the gentleman from Florida, and that point is well made. And it just seems to me, to your point, if you want to do it at the state level, part of my argument would apply even then. I just trust people more than I trust, the brilliance of the legislators in the General Assembly in North Carolina, for where I used to serve, and certainly the brilliance here. And I just note that the general philosophy of the left, which is to say we're going to tell you what to do. I count on people to figure things out for the best. But even, Mr. Gaetz, the situation you described in Florida, that you've been an advocate for these things in Florida and the state, at least you have an opportunity then for experience to be a teacher, right? If you have, if you do that really aggressively in Florida, and then crime rates go up in Florida, then the people in North Carolina might not want to follow your example. Or contrarily, if it shows that, boy, it really makes a big difference, and people's lives are better, and recidivism falls, and crime falls, and employers are not really suffering any disadvantage, then North Carolina might want to follow you. But when you do this and you put the heavy hand of the federal government, and the other thing liberals always act is if the money's unlimited, this money will be borrowed from China. And that's something to think about in every occasion, but it never is thought about, and there's never any consideration of the dignity of the individual and the freedom of individuals, and I'm out of time.
Gentleman yields back. Who seeks recognition? For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be for this, but I've got a couple of reasons that I won't be, and I just want to briefly go over them. One of them is I'm a Californian, and we have lost track of prosecution. We've lost track of penalties. We've created an environment in which our crime is rising because we're not even bothering to create the record on criminal behavior. And so it seems to be an inappropriate time to fund California's ability to wipe away the past as quickly as possible, while in fact not holding people accountable. Being less parochial to my state, though, you know, the bill that would have been first and now will be second deals legitimately with what we do at the federal level, what our clean slate proposal will be, what our expungement will be. And I'm sad that we're taking this one first because I think we should have taken the federal one first. We are a national federal committee. Our primary responsibility, and certainly the primary responsibility of taxes, money taken involuntarily from the various states, is not to send it back to the states in the way of inducement. What we spend at the federal level on people who have been convicted of federal crimes and how we deal with the database is our first responsibility. Oddly enough, the bill that will be considered next, as far as I can see, doesn't have a similar funding. So I might suggest, if this were not to prevail, that this $250 million might be applied to what you want to accomplish in the database federally, since there's no authorization for money on that act. But having said that, I also would like to be very, very personal for a moment. To a certain extent, we are mandating this expungement in the idea that things will disappear, which is no longer realistic. If anyone wants to look at my Wikipedia, I would hope they wouldn't if they want to be my friend, but if they want to look at my Wikipedia, they'll probably still see that when I was a teenager, I had an unregistered firearm, and I pled to it. Now, it was expunged a generation ago, actually before databases. It should never have been in a searchable database, but not only did it find its way into a searchable database, but it showed up in the LA Times in a hit piece. So guess what? It is forever going to be part of Wikipedia. I was 18. It was an unconstitutional conviction then, and it was still an unconstitutional. I defiantly believe I did nothing wrong and that the law was wrong, not me. But having said that, let's be honest. You no longer can expunge and expect something to disappear. It isn't part of the reality of our environment today. If anyone here were to be picked up as, for example, the Speaker of the House's husband was, it is not disappearing no matter what the outcome of the case is. It will be there on the internet forever. So it's one thing to pass laws, as we did on the Oversight Committee under Elijah Cummings, that say you cannot use this information in the determination of a job, a federal job. That's a good thing to consider, to give people that opportunity, that they not have that forever barring them. But it is unrealistic to believe that expunging databases is somehow going to change the ability to research and find it. It's going to be found. And if it isn't found when it needs to be found, it's even worse. So I will not be supporting a $250 million nice-to-have handed to the states so that they can have us pay for what is their responsibility. I will continue to support a sensible ability to have those who have done their time and need to get on with their lives and have sensible employment opportunities have them. And for that reason, I think I've explained why I'll be voting no, but I thank the chairman and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.